you so much. Thank you to all of you for coming to listen to this experience. Well, as Marcelo told you, I went last year to do my field practicum work in the Peruvian Amazon. And this is part of the field research action practice that we do as MVP students. And we used to work with a host organization for this. So in this case, in my case, I was very blessed, and I am very grateful to have worked with the Field Museum of Chicago and the Color Science Action Center. I am going to give you a little bit of the background of the project I was involved with them. Yeah, I invited Ashwin to join us today. Ashwin is a research associate for the Color Science Action Center of the Field Museum of Chicago, and he's also a professor of environmental studies at the Amherst College. He is still a research associate. He used to work at the Field Museum as a social researcher as part of the Conservation for Wellbeing project. And he was involved into the quality of life plans process, but mostly not in the Apidaco-Payaco region, mostly in the Perla area. And as a joint effort, the Field Museum asked him to put our work together and go together for at least the first 2 years. Okay, Ashwin he is teaching a class at Amherst College, so he asked his students also to join this presentation. So to continue a little bit with what we were talking about, Ashwin, I already gave the audience a little bit of the context about your relationship with the project and how we went together to do some of this work at the end. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the context, but first of all, I want to thank to the Field Museum for their support on all this project. Also, Amherst College for their support as well, and the Instituto del Bien Común, because they are the Peruvian organization who supported us in every single activity that we carried out. And of course, University of Texas program and the Center of Language. Okay, first of all, I want to just take these images out and talk about reflection. Okay, I chose this image on purpose because we talk about reflection a lot. We talk about reflecting about processes, about ideas, about projects, work, research, day-to-day things. And reflection sometimes is just look to ourselves a little bit. So what is reflection about? So when I was traveling to the Antillaco, I took this picture and I was thinking I am going to this place to carry out a reflection process. Like driving or riding in a canoe, seeing reflection through all the way. So it was just like that. At that moment, when I started looking at that image, I started thinking on how is that we were going to carry out. And that actually struck me at the moment, and I wanted to share that with you before. That this is a process of reflection, so it's a process of look at the things that we have in front of us that maybe we just don't see if we don't think and try to listen to what we can. So, the Conservation for Wellbeing project it's a project of reflecting. So that's what I wanted to say. So where is this reflection from? So I work in the Loreto department of Peru. This is where most of the Amazon is, where the Peruvian Amazon is. I work in the Apidaco Regional Conservation Area. I guess my MVP peers have listened to this name a lot, and they know how to say it right now, but it's a little bit complicated. But yes, Apidaco Regional Conservation Area. In this area, it is surrounded by indigenous territories that relatively recently they got their land titled. And there are many communities that are of indigenous peoples that are like living surrounding conservation regional area. There are also many actions that have been taken in, in this area. And well, this is just like to give you an idea about the geographical map location of this action. So more specifically, I will give you an introduction of the indigenous peoples living in the Antillaco-Payaco River Basin. It's kind of a vast regional context. In this region, we have different ethnic groups. The Okainas, maybe some of us that have been working there lately with the governance and infrastructure project are more related to this. But these ethnic groups are called the Okainas. We call themselves Okainas, we talk to Boras and Jaguar. I basically and specifically work with the Boras and Mitotos groups. What do they do for living? So they live from subsistence agriculture, commercial and subsistence like fishing, limited timber extraction, hunting, and I added the handicrafts actions because this is an activity that is not shown very well in literature, but they do it in their daily life, and they are also incorporating it in as a commercial activity. Actually, as a result of actions of conservation projects and NGOs. So this land is covered 80% by forests that are categorized as swamp forest and also alluvial plains. The communities, we work in 4 communities in this region. These communities are the Tierra Firme community, that is the number 2, that is right here. Did I mute this? Okay. Then we have the Boras de Rio Nuevo, that is the number 4. We have the Boras de Pucarquillo and Huitotos de Pucarquillo, that is the number 10 and 11. These 2 territories are right next to each other. And the other ones are a little bit farther. The farthest one was the Boras de Rio Nuevo. So just to give you an idea, this is located in Iquitos. The main town is Iquitos, and to go to these territories, you have to go to Iquitos first. That is the only city that you cannot get by. So you have to fly there, and from there you have to take a ferry that is taking you to the port of Velas for 6 hours, and after that you have to travel by the Antillaco River, that is one of the affluents of the Amazonas River, for about 4 hours or 5 hours to get to the far community, and to the closest one about 1 hour. So it was a kind of a, what we can call a remote in terms of getting there. And many others. So to talk about the Conservation for Wellbeing project, I would like to put you into context with the project I was involved to do this action research practice. So the mission of the project is related to the mission of the Keller Science Action Center, that is the center who is basically leading this social conservation and biodiversity project. So the mission of this action center is to translate museum science into action for conservation and quality of life of local people. They began implementing this approach, that it's an approach for rural development and long-term conservation initiatives drawing on the indigenous concept of land. I think that some of you are familiar with this concept, but I'm going to explain a little bit more later. And this process is a process that complements and builds on rapid biodiversity inventories that have been carried out in this region since 1999. So they have been working here for more than a decade. Okay, so, and this started as an effort that was born from the biodiversity inventories that were carried out by the field museum. And they decided to incorporate social conservation aspects of the people that were social aspects of the people that was living there, and they were indigenous peoples in the case of the region. So the Conservation for Wellbeing project started with that spirit, with the spirit of integrate the social aspects of local people into conservation. If you have more questions about this, at the end of the presentation, we have Ashwin here that maybe he can answer some questions after. Okay, to know a little bit of the approach, they apply research and participatory methods for collective discussion of priorities. They also have a decision-making, cultural values and aspirations-based approach on which they do like a certain kind of validation of local strengths and cultural values of the people, who is basically involved into these conservation actions because they live there. They also apply ecological knowledge because this is integrated into conservation actions that were born from biodiversity inventories from the field. And they also look at the organizational structures of the people, of the local people. They are applying this approach not only with indigenous peoples, not only in indigenous territories. They work even in urban areas of Chicago. And I think you are familiar with that and what they are doing right now in Pembroke, Chicago. They also are working with a campesino community. And this is not only an approach for working with the region. So this is what they present as their conceptual model. They have objectives related to participation, inclusion, empowerment, commitment, and reflection. And this part is where the action research practice that I carried out is involved in the process of reflecting about questions, about results, about learning, about challenges, and why know about things that we need to learn to improve. So, what is the quality of life plan? This approach that Field Museum and through the Keller Action Science Action Center do is this process of empowerment. It's done by a methodology that they call mapeo de usos y fortalezas. That is the uses and strengths, or assets and strengths mapping. They call it the MOVE by their letters, their acronym in Spanish. And following the approach they have in the center, they come to the creation of a tool that they call a quality of life plan. So a quality of life plan is a tool that represents a result of this reflection on the assets and uses of the natural resources that local people. So the local people document their strengths as a community, as a collective, and they record how they use their natural resources. And after that, they set priorities for community action in 5 different aspects that are cultural, social, political, economic, and environmental. So what you can see here is basically what is going inside our quality of life plan. So it's not the same for every community because this is a process that is very depending on the community members itself. So it's not like a thing that is generalized, but some plans are longer than others, some integrates more aspects than others, some more I don't like to use the word simple, but okay, we could say that have more information than others depending on the community decisions. So this is based through a moment of dialogue, capacity building, and community decision making. If you have more questions, make them about this. So important questions about the work we did is this field practicum engages with the Keller Action Center ideas in the sense that they want to know how to measure at some point the achievements or the results or the success of quality of life. Since this is a process of reflection, it's just like how to generate the most important questions about the use of this quality of life plans or how they accomplish the purpose they were made in. As an empowerment tool, as a decision-making tool. We all know that development projects in the South region, or I can say like places that are subject or object of development projects. We know that sometimes these projects are basically consistent with what people want to do, and sometimes they are not. So the way to achieve like a genuinely and significantly participatory way of, of doing development or conservation is basically take into account the points of view of the people, but in a way that if they are reflected and visibilized, okay, in a tangible way. So quality of life plans are made to empower people to advocate for themselves. So the Field Museum, Keller Science Action Center, they want to know if quality of life plans are serving to reflect the strengths and the needs of the people from the Antillaco Project. So this was a question that we took very seriously, and we want to understand how the community members perceive the quality of life plans. We want to know what the community members perceive that works well in these quality of life plans, what can be improved about the processes of elaborating and implementing these quality of life plans. As well, they want to know about these quality of life plans leveraging alliances with governments and institutions, because we know that development projects are coming from the outside to these regions. So how these quality of life plans have been used in a sense that they reflect the voices of the people in front of the agencies or organizations that want to implement development projects. So how the national and local government functionaries perceive and relate to quality of life plans, what roles are different, or what roles are different like that. The agencies, what different roles the agencies play in the practice. And what are the most important questions from the institutions involved in the project and the process, not only from the community members, but also from the organizations and different agencies or actors, stakeholders. And how can they, or quality of life plans, how can they help these sectors to improve and foster human well-being and good environmental stewardship? So the other question is, do people from the communities of Antillaco that have carried out this quality of life plans pursue priorities that differ substantively from what the Field Museum considers conventional development priorities? So what we did was like applying different methods for assessing perceptions and understanding the most relevant successes for the indigenous peoples of the Antillaco region about the quality of life plans process. And we try to do this by listening to the voices of the Antillaco community members to find and propose not like a monitoring or indicators set, but like the main questions and concerns about this process that can help improve the implementations of this process in different or other locations. So we try to understand also the perception from government identities of Peru about quality of life plans. We wanted to determine what aspects of the quality of life plans the members of indigenous communities think are the most successful, and also document the challenges and opportunities that, according to these community members, should be taken into account for foster or the empowerment and well-being of their communities. And also generate information needed to define in a preliminary fashion indicators to measure the impact of the previous plan. Okay, this is not like a monitoring and evaluation conventional process, but we were trying to generate which are the questions we want to ask first, or the topics we need to address first in order to understand the success of this project. So as a conceptual framework, we did like, well, I did this drawing because I don't like PowerPoint square things like this. So we have the indigenous territories with the 4 indigenous communities we work in, and we have also the the quality of life plans, that is basically the tool that we want to understand, and the regional conservation area, that is like this landscape on which these territories are. So we want to do a reflection about the perceptions of the indigenous community members. So this was made through participatory methods, that this was just like the core of my field practical research. And we have here the project of conservation for well-being, that is basically encompassing all the actions of the field museum area. And we also have the stakeholders or the actors that we know that are government and non-government actors. So we have we want to know who has like this participation into this project. What are they doing? How are they doing it, and why? So we want to understand if the quality of life plans process has been internalized into this government and non-government organizations that are having like certain kind of influence. Okay. So participatory methods. So we went to the Ampijaco region to, like 15 minutes. Okay, we went to the Ampijaco region to implement participatory methods to understand the perception of community members of the 4 indigenous territories we decided to go. So we developed 3 types of participatory methods. Those methods were applied or implemented in what we call the community meetings. So the community meetings, it was like a kind of assembly or reunion that we carried out, organized among with all the community members, of course with their consent and asking for their permission first. And as part of these community meetings, we developed 3 types of activities. So we want to know how quality of life plans are perceived by community members. So we have like the time component, we have the relationships component, and we have, well, the time in a sense of what has been happening, and the time in the sense of what is going to happen, or which are the expectations of improvement. And the envisioning of what has changed for the better or not good. So for the time perceptions, we developed timelines, and we organized a meeting when we decided to together to tell stories about what has been going on, but with a sense of time. So we developed timelines. So together we put some emphasis on the period between 2008 and 2018. That is the period when the project started, the quality of life plans process started in 2012. So we wanted to go a little bit to the past and 10 years after. So we decided to do it in that time frame, but depending on each community and each how they organize and decide to tell the story, they could start before or a little bit. So we asked them to go and tell us, like year by year, according to how they remember and what they remember, which are the events that are more important in their history as a community and related to the creation of this quality of life. So then we worked. Are you there?
Yeah, we are. Sorry. My
Okay.
battery went low.
Okay, perfect. You want to say something?
Nope, we're good.
Okay, perfect. Okay, then we have like this stakeholders characterization. This is what we call like an exercise, el ejercicio de la maloca. That is the exercise of the maloca. A maloca is like a big house where all the community members get together to do their spell practices or their practices, whatever they want. That could be cooking, that could be spiritual practices, that could be like trade, or they could be like parties or meetings, assemblies, and so on. So we try to put the maloca at the face with the stakeholders on the outside, and so they put like categorization of each stakeholder, like if they have a good relationship with them, they put it on green, a fair relationship on yellow, and a poor relationship in red. And we documented why. And after that, we did this exercise of community visioning. Well, this was divided into men and women groups, so that we decided to make the groups smaller. And after that, asking them to group themselves voluntarily with whichever they want to group, and drawing the past and the present. We asked them to imagine that they were a bird that was just like flying over, and then, thank you, and then drawing the community and saying, okay, what happened 10 years ago? And if that bird is flying over the community right now, what will that bird see? So we had like a graphic. This photo is not showing it very well, but we have some other images. So we did also some structured interviews with comuneros and comuneras. That's what they call between each other, about the knowledge and existence of quality of life plans, how they perceive that has been going well or not too well, and so on. Also, we visited external stakeholders to understand their perception about this. So key findings. The most important finding that we got from the community meetings and also the interviews is that the quality of life plans reflect what local communities members think and envision as the best way to manage their territory. They acknowledge that in the quality of life plan, the information about their strengths of what they want to do with their communities, there is a place where it is. However, the role of quality of life plans is hard to disentangle from the ACR creation. So during the community meetings, most of the community members who talked to them said that the quality of life plans came as a result of a chain of events that is related to conservation. It started with the creation of the conservation area and also the land title of their territory. Land tiling is something related to conservation. We talked about that before, but I also want to point out that the land tiling process, it's entangled with conservation actions, but it's not only the conservation. It's like an act of recognition of indigenous rights and also the access to the land. So land tiling is always there. So it's a food for thought to think about land tiling as a conservation-related action, or also something that has to be civilized in or disentangle in the discourse as well as indigenous rights matter. So these are examples of timelines, and these are some quotes that we have from the local comuneros and comuneras. So for example, these comuneros say, here we have how it was before. We can see the timber taken in boats and the hunters carrying the meat of the animals that were our resources. The refrigerators extracted our coaches. So the local community members have more access to resources and they feel less vulnerable to incursion by extractions. This is illegal loggers, poachers, illegal fishing. They also are concerned about finding stable permanent markets to locate their products. There are also different perceptions between the young and leaders and elders about the quality of life plans. We find that the young leaders and the ones that are more involved into the processes are more informed and more aware. And the elders, sometimes they just think about quality of life plans as quality of life in general. So during the interviews we had with them, we found that quality of life is something that is related to access to their resources and be able to make decisions about what they want to do with their resources. But if you ask an elder and if you ask a young person or a person who's leader on these matters, they will talk in different ways. From the stakeholders' perspective, we have that they rank as stakeholders and mostly ranking the most close government entity as the poorest, that is the municipality. So these are other perceptions about like stakeholders. So we found that NGOs play a leading role in assisting and advising local communities in decision-making processes. They link their actions and they relate those actions to NGOs as facilitators of this process. So they say, thanks to this NGO is that we got to have this process accomplished. Or thanks to the help of these people is that we now have this done. So in this sense, there is still kind of a dependency from NGOs to help them rescue their action. This is an example of the envisioning process that we did. So this is like a, thank you, yeah. This is like how they perceive, like how the communities were in the past and how they can envision the community they live in the future or as it is right now. Some of them went farther and think about the future, and some of them think in the present of how it is right now. So we can see that through quality of life plans, the community members perceive they have more access to opportunities they consider can help them improving their quality of life in terms of material aspects. So there were different perceptions of quality of life. Some of them and most of them were related to material aspects and resources, and others are more related to like living in a peaceful environment, able to maintain their language and their cultural and traditional practices. So they mention stakeholders, for example, in their drawings of the present. So now we have the DIC office that is from the Ministry of Agriculture, and they say they are at this moment working in our favor. So in this sense, for them, that reflects. We have also the perception of the government. They have authority and they have will, but they say that they have resources. Also, NGOs, they have the will and they have resources, but they are struggling to coordinate with the government. And this is just like a constant discourse in every single interview we develop with government agencies and non-government. So NGOs have identified internal conflicts inside the indigenous communities because of setbacks in project success, especially projects that are coming from the central government. They also pointed out that the quality of life plans elaboration process has to put time and effort, and it's not a thing that can be done like very fast. So some conclusions and some recommendations. So we can say, and maybe if you have any question, we can talk about this later, that there is little evidence of the empowerment of indigenous peoples to speak up and stand up when it comes to putting the ideas and priorities reflected in the quality of life plans first. We can talk about this in a sense of relationship with the government, in a sense of dependency from NGOs, and so on and so forth. And also in a sense of representation, how they elect their federations, if the federation of that year and has leaders that can help empowering the rest of the community, and many other aspects that came up in the interviews that are related to empowerment. So there are also internal conflict management that has to be addressed in the community, that in some sense it's also exacerbated by the incursion of projects that are not necessarily aligned with the quality of life plan. There is an urgent need from external entities to revive these quality of life plans before starting initiatives related to indigenous peoples and indigenous territories. Our government entities like the Ministerio de Cultura have a gap of articulation. At this ministry, they haven't been able to track and promote quality of life plans related actions at the institutional level. They have a lot of rotation of staff, and every time they have like new staff, they have to just catch up with everything. and they haven't been able to articulate successfully and integrate successfully all the government agencies or departments involved in this process. So an option is to integrate the visioning exercises of indigenous peoples into ministerial strategy. So how is that we can go to a visioning exercise that is a draw made by indigenous peoples in a community assembly? And how can we integrate this information into a government plan? It is important to listen to how indigenous peoples decide and prepare to communicate what they want, even if that requires an extra effort to put it into an official level. But the information is there. The information has been generated. It has to be put in official regulations or orders, or I don't know. So the state also, by not committing in practice when they decide to participate, also break trust with NGOs. So many NGOs said that the state has been not accomplishing what they say they are interested in getting involved with, and that breaks trust and generates conflict, and also represents an obstacle for like putting this efforts into practice. NGOs are the most important facilitators of dialogue, and there is also a concern about NGOs becoming executors of the actions instead of facilitators of processes of dialogue and empowerment that have to be led by. And ideas and evaluation and monitoring. So it's to follow the same reflection path. This is an exercise that could be carried out by indigenous community members by themselves, or community members by themselves. They told me we should do this together once a year. We can do this together by ourselves. We don't need you. I was very grateful to hear that, actually, because I mean that's what we want to hear. We want to listen people saying like we need to do this and we need to do it yearly, and we can do it by ourselves. And this is something that maybe NGOs can help to promote instead of just like going and facilitate a workshop. So revisiting the process together, help them to keep in mind what is important for them as a community, and most important, what they think about themselves collectively, their values, strengths, and assets. Questions, comments? I just wanted to show you this. Ashwin is gonna laugh right now. This is the first thing I saw when I get to Tierra Firme, and to me, this is the most like clear image about how development projects are not successful. Why is that? I mean, this is like a toilet. The community of Tierra Firme is seasonally flooded by the Amazon, the Ampillaco River, most of the year. But sometimes the river just like goes down, and some development project came here and set up like toilets because people need to go to the bathroom, of course, and they need toilets, and they just set up one toilet here, one toilet there, another toilet there, and then you get up in your canoe and you go to the bathroom in the night. They said, why is that I need to go in the night to that toilet? I mean, I can do what I've always done. Just like right next to mine. And when the river goes down, this thing is not working anymore. So they decided to take all the materials out of their casitas, of the little houses where these toilets were put, and use them to build like other things that they really need. I guess if these people came here to put some toilets and do with a very good intention, I have no doubt about it. But if they have asked them first what they need, we will not have this throne over us all, basically. So, but it was just like kind of shocking, but at the same time kind of funny, but humorous, sarcastic, ironic thing to see. I mean, when I was just like, yeah, this is not working. and this is a good example of it. So, a very image reflecting itself. So I'm so sorry if I went too fast. But that's it.